Take it
Hi,
away.
everybody. Hi, I'm Brad Thompson, and I'm at Clemson University in South Carolina. And what I thought I would do to begin my remarks this afternoon is I thought I would begin by telling you how it is and when it was that I got into Objectivism. So I was 19 years old, and I will tell you in all honesty, I was directionless, and to the extent that I had any direction in my life, it was in sports completely. I went to university to play football and to run track and had very successful careers in athletics. But it really wasn't until someone, a good friend of mine, gave me a copy of The Fountainhead, which was the first book of Ayn Rand's that I read, that I realized that there was an entirely different universe out there. And like I'm sure many of you, when I read The Fountainhead for me first and then Atlas, it without question changed my life. And I mean, literally, when I finally closed the book on when I closed the book on reading The Fountainhead, which I read over the course of a long weekend, I came out of my room and it was an entirely different world to me. And it was as though I had met my best friend in the person of Howard Rourke. And it was as though I had entered a universe, the universe that I had always wanted to live in. And then very shortly after that, I read Atlas Shrugged. And in very short order, I went from being a young man who was primarily concerned with sports to someone who was now primarily concerned with the world of ideas and politics. And so about a year later, I made the decision to enlist in the battle of ideas. This was in the late 1970s, and without question, the great battle of the time was the battle between socialism and capitalism. And it was a battle that seemed to me that we were losing. And so I decided at that moment that I was going to be a college professor. So by then I was a sophomore in college. And from that point forward, I had a direction, a focus, a purpose in my life. But I will tell you, and I'm saying this now to give the young people who are here with us today some advice. When I was an undergraduate objectivist, in hindsight now, I have no doubt that I was probably obnoxious certainly with my professors. I was constantly battling my professors. And in the end, I think now in hindsight, I realize that was a mistake. In some cases, I think it probably was not a mistake and that it was the right thing to do to battle these professors. But I do think now that I was there with professors, who were brilliant professors and who had a lot to teach me. And it was a mistake for me to think that I had something to teach my professors. So over time, I quickly realized that that was not the approach that I ought to be taking. So eventually, I went to graduate school, and then in many ways, I think one of the most important decisions I ever made in my career was I took a couple of years off and was a teacher, a high school teacher at an all-boys boarding school in Canada. And those were, I think, many of the best years of my life, where I really decided, I took those 2 years with the purpose of deciding what I wanted to do for the rest of my life. And I came to the decision that what I wanted to do was to be a college professor. And I gave myself the following challenge during those 2 years. And the challenge was, if after working teaching 6 days a week, which we did, and coaching sports, if after every long day I would come home and if I could sit down and read and write, and at this time I actually listened to all of Dr. Peikoff's lectures on the history of philosophy. This was after, I'd worked a 12-hour day at school, and I'd come home, listen to his lectures, take detailed notes. And the challenge that I gave to myself was, if after 2 years, if I can, in addition to my teaching and coaching responsibilities, if I could still be engaged in the intellectual life, in ideas, if I still had that burning, yearning passion, right, to be engaged in ideas and to really want to be a teacher and a writer, then I knew at that moment that going on to a future academic career was probably right for me. And that's exactly what I did. I then went to graduate school and finished my Ph.D. in 1993, and I've been teaching ever since. I am currently at Clemson University, where I wear 2 hats at Clemson. I am a professor of political philosophy in the Department of Political Science at Clemson, and I'm also the executive director of the Clemson Institute for the Study of Capitalism. So let me first tell you a little bit about my the academic hat that I wear. So obviously, like Professor Smith, I principally do 2 things. I teach courses in political philosophy. This semester I'm teaching a course, for instance, in contemporary political thought, and one of the books that we're reading is Atlas Shrugged. I teach courses such as Wisdom of the Ancients and Modern Moral Political Philosophy. I teach a course on the political thought of the American founding. And without question, teaching is my passion. Teaching is probably the thing that comes most naturally to me. And it's the thing that, without reservation, I love. Every single day that I walk into the classroom with my students, I love teaching. It's probably the thing that I was most naturally suited to do and to be. So I devote a lot of my time to preparing. I think it's the responsibility of a professor to actually profess. That is to say, you ought to have something to say, something important to say. And every time I walk into class, I want that particular class on that particular day to be the best class that my students have ever had. So teaching is great fun, and it's an avocation. It's something that it's kind of addictive, and once you get into it, it provides a lifetime of both pleasure and satisfaction. The second part of my academic career is writing. So for those of you who know my academic career, I do a lot of writing. My academic writing is principally on the political thought of the American founding. So I have a book on the political thought of John Adams, and most recently a book on the Declaration of Independence. But I've also written on a lot of other topics in the history of political philosophy. And this is interesting because when I first started my career, writing, I would say, did not come naturally or easily to me. It was something that I had to work on. And in fact, it wasn't until second semester of my senior year of college that a professor told me that he didn't think I was a very good writer. And I was shocked and stunned by this, because I'd pretty well had an A on every paper I'd ever written throughout my entire college career. And then to be told at the very end of that college career, that I wasn't a writer was like a slap in the face. And so I made a concerted effort from that point forward to become a better writer. And I can tell you, I have written every single day since that professor told me that I was not a very good writer. And I think I can say now that writing is something that comes pretty easily to me, maybe in fact even too easily. And so in addition to my academic writing, some of you may know that I also now have kind of a side career writing for a broader public audience. And, for the last 20 years, probably, I've been writing essays and op-eds for the public press. And most recently, I've started my own Substack. And so I'm pretty much putting out new essays on contemporary moral, cultural, social, political issues on a weekly basis. And that increasingly is something that I love about my career, is being able to write. And in many ways, it now, I find, gives me greater intellectual satisfaction than I think even teaching does. As Professor Smith said, I mean, the wonderful thing about writing is it's thinking. It's thinking out loud, thinking on paper, and thinking through problems, and searching for clarity of thought, which is something in many ways that I've simply become addicted to. So writing is now is a great passion for me. It's in fact, writing, I probably won't be a college professor teaching for the rest of my life until the day I die. But the one thing I know absolutely with certainty is that I will write every single day now for the rest of my life. And it gives me enduring satisfactions. I also have a career here at Clemson University as an academic entrepreneur. So in 2005, in fact, through the friendship and assistance of John Allison, BB&T gave a grant to Clemson University to start a new academic center for the study of capitalism. And I was brought down to Clemson as its first founding executive director. And that's what I've been doing now for the last 16 years, is in addition to my teaching career and writing, is also running the Clemson Institute for the Study of Capitalism. Now, what is the Clemson Institute? The Clemson Institute for the Study of Capitalism is now, I think, America's premier university-based teaching and research center dedicated to the moral defense of capitalism. So that's our broad mission. And what do we do? So we run programs throughout the course of the year. We have probably now the most popular and well-attended lecture series on campus. Every summer we put on conferences for college professors, undergraduates, and high school students. We also have a writing program, a publication program. The Institute has now published a number of books. We have a small pamphlet titled Capitalism Defined and Defended, which if you're interested, please contact me and I'm happy to send you a copy. And then I would say, though, without question, our most significant program that we're running now is something called the Lyceum Scholars Program. It was an idea I came up with 7 or 8 years ago. And it's a scholarship program. We give 10 scholarships per year to incoming freshmen, renewable over their 4 years. And in exchange for the scholarship, the students are required to take 8 classes together as a cohort over their 4 years. We use a great books approach to studying the history of freedom, capitalism, the principles of the American founding, and moral character. There's no other academic program in the United States like it, and I genuinely believe that it is now the most innovative and the most important academic program at any college or university in the United States. And it's, in many ways, I think it's one example of how higher education in the United States can be saved and preserved, because I'm sure for all of the college students here with us today, you know that American higher education is imploding for a lot of reasons, not the least of which is the role of political correctness on college campuses. And increasingly, it turns out tens of thousands of high school students and their parents don't want that kind of education. And so we are providing a new kind of intellectual experience in American higher education. Let me just add one other thing I want to say about the Lyceum Scholars Program, and that is we have added a new program, which is called the Socratic Tutor Program. So we assign to each one of our students what we call Socratic Tutor. And a Socratic Tutor is a faculty member connected with the program who meets every other week with his or her students, the purpose of which is twofold. First, to help our students translate theory, the ideas they're learning in their classes, into practice. So a student reading Aristotle's Nicomachean Ethics with me in my Wisdom of the Ancients class now has the challenge in the Socratic Tutor session of relating and translating Aristotle's ideas into their lives here now today. And the second purpose of the Socratic Tutor program is to help these young men and women to start thinking seriously and deeply, maybe for the first time in their lives, about the question of moral character. And these Socratic Tutor sessions, I can tell you, are a revelation to me and I think to the students. And they are, I think, probably the most unique part of what we're doing in the Lyceum Scholars Program. Let me add one other thing. And I mention this really just because I want to give you an example of, certainly for me, of what my workday looks like. So I typically get up sometime between 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning. I typically write until noon, and then after sometime in the early afternoon, I go into the office and I do administrative work, usually until 6 or 7 o'clock at night. So, I mention that only because I think it's important for all of you who are considering academic careers to know that it's important, very important, to work hard. And I think that is the avenue for success in an academic career, is to work hard, keep your nose to the grindstone, and just produce. I'd like to say a few things before I finish about graduate school. I'm sure many of you are considering going to graduate school. But I think you need to be very clear about certain things. Graduate school can be a very long, grueling experience. It's sort of like Hobbes's state of nature. It can be nasty, poor, and brutish. And if you decide that you want to go to graduate school, my advice to you is do not consider graduate school to be a 5th year of undergraduate school. It is your first year of professional training. And so therefore, the way you lived as an undergraduate is not the way you should be living as a graduate student. You really have to completely dedicate yourself now to creating a career as an academic. And you should also know, in all honesty, that there are not a lot of jobs certainly in the humanities. So it's very important to know this, that if you want to go to graduate school, if you want to become a college professor, you have to know, and this is why I took those 2 years off to teach at a high school, was I really was trying to figure out whether this is how I wanted to spend the rest of my life. And so I do advise young people to take a year or two off after you graduate from college, and really try to determine what it is you want to do for the rest of your life. And if it's going to be in the academy, given the constraints that exist, particularly for objectivists in the academic world, you better know that this is what you really want to do. And in fact, the standard for me was, when I made my final decision to go to graduate school, was this. This is the only job in the world I want. This is the only thing I want to do and can imagine myself doing. So you have to go in to graduate school with a realistic attitude. But you also have to go into graduate school knowing that this is really what you want to do for the rest of your life. And then finally, two pieces of advice for success in graduate school. The first piece of success, or the first piece of advice I have for you to be successful in graduate school is just one, to work harder than everybody else. That's really important. I mean, because as objectivists, if it's known amongst your colleagues or professors that that you are an objectivist, sometimes you have an uphill battle. So you have to be able to work harder than everybody else, and your professors have to be able to respect you. Let me say this, if you have the work ethic of James Taggart, you're probably not doing it right. So you've really got to have a kind of work ethic of Howard Rourke or Hank Reardon, Dagny Taggart to succeed in graduate school. And then the last thing I'm going to say is be Canadian, by which I mean always be polite and courteous to people. That will help professors and colleagues who would otherwise be hostile to your ideas. It helps them to overcome their inherent prejudices. So anyway, let me end there and just say to all of you who are considering going to graduate school, good luck. And if I can help you in any way, I'm happy to do it.